Greetings to all of you fine registrars and admissions officers as you meet in Louisville in this historic 50th anniversary meeting of the Southern Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. I'm Charles Walker, speaking from sunny Tallahassee, Florida, the home of the Florida State University. I was registrar at Florida State from 1950 to 1960 and was elected in '59 to serve during 1960 as president of the Southern Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. It was an honor to be selected and to work with registrars and admissions people from across the South. One of the highlights was the trip to the Sacrao meeting in Los Angeles, which was provided by the association. We dealt with problems relating to the impending tide of students. We worked with principals on uniform transcript blanks. We talked about coordinating college nights, about how to use IBM punch cards in our registration processes. As you know, during that period, there were many new institutions opening, so we had a particular responsibility to help train and involve these new professional people coming into the field, and that was a delight. In Florida, we especially had large numbers of new institutions, and it was just in a recent time when we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Florida Association. Certainly you helped in establishing that, and I happened to be the first president. We were delighted that you met last year. It wasn't so sunny then in Jacksonville at Sawgrass for a wonderful Southern Association meeting. I just want to thank you for the fine work that you do, for the true professionals that you are, for the training that you provide for newcomers. And I know that the next 50 years are going to even be brighter because of the fine work that all of you are doing. Thank you, and come to Florida to see us.
Hi. Thanks for letting me participate via videotape in this momentous occasion, Sacrao's 50th anniversary. I'm Ray Vitulli, Registrar and Dean of Admissions at the University of Houston from 1950 to 1979. It was an honor and a privilege for me to be president of Sacrao in 1963, when Sacrao met in conjunction with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools in Memphis. In those days, SACS and Sacrao met at the same location at the same time. Our Sacrao program lasted for about half a day, and as strange as it may seem now, we perhaps had no more than 50 to 100 participants, including some deans and college presidents. While we were a small group by comparison, we strived to increase our numbers and improve professionalism among our members. I consider the major challenge of my presidency to be increasing our membership throughout the southern region. I believe I was successful in doing that and in encouraging not only membership, but participation in the annual programs. Through increased membership, we developed the strength to be able to separate ourselves from the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and this occurred some 4 or 5 years later. Again, I thank you for letting me share in this celebration, the 50th anniversary of Sacrao.
Greetings to Sacrao and congratulations on our 50th. I'm Frank Spain. I was your 1967 president, and at that time had been at the University of South Florida for 8 years. USF had been in operation for 7. Sacrao itself was all of 20 years old as it held its annual meeting in Dallas. What a leader Sacrao has become in the intervening years. 1967 issues, concerns, challenges, and rewards centered around growth and interinstitutional. There was tremendous growth in the new colleges and universities opened in that era. Tremendous growth in student enrollment, growth in student unrest and protest. At my own institution, for example, it happened that my office adjoined the president's office, and there was kind of a secret installation of a buzzer system whereby if his office became occupied, he could hit this buzzer and it would sound in my office, which was a signal for me to call the campus police. That was mild compared to what happened in other locations. Luckily, the buzzer never had to be used. There was tremendous growth in selective service certifications and all of the processing that went with that. And this is where the interinstitutional comes in. There was a growth in student mobility from one college or university to another, be it in-state or out-of-state. Thank goodness there was growth in establishing a lasting network of professional, personal colleagues to cope with all of this other growth. Interinstitutional dialogue became much more frequent and much more precise. Sacrao played a vital role in all of these areas and has emerged as the standard by which other professional associations are measured. I'm very fond of words. One of my favorite words is lagniappe. Lagniappe is a French Creole term which means something extra, the 13th cookie in the baker's dozen, the smile with the service. To me, lagniappe personifies the spirit of Sacrao. For example, you keep retirees on your mailing list with newsletters and materials such as this for the convention to be held in February. These materials reached me 3 days ago. We appreciate that. We appreciate the fact that the past presidents have an opportunity to present through this type tape their perspectives of how things were when they were active. It truly is lagniappe. You might recall that I became Sacrao president while just in my 8th year at USF. That was a terrific honor considering the age of the institution, and I'm sure considering my qualifications. With all of the 1996 rhetoric about the campaign process and with murmuring already starting about the year 2000 campaign, it occurred to me that you might get a kick out of how I conducted my campaign to become Sacrao president. At a Louisville meeting of Sacrao, John Weens and I were having a 2-person coffee break and had just sat down at the coffee table when Ken Vickery, who was then at Clemson and who later went on to become Acro president, approached us at the table and explained that he was on the Nominations and Elections Committee and was looking for a new member to join that committee and asked if I would be interested in serving in that capacity. Of course, I was overjoyed and assured him that I would indeed be interested. Having completed the business, Ken stood to leave, and in standing, he somehow knocked over my very full and very hot cup of coffee right into my lap. He was somewhat embarrassed. I think it affected the political process, perhaps, because somehow I was catapulted from being a member of the Nominations and Elections Committee to becoming president of Sacrao itself. Again, congratulations to Sacrao on its 50th. I urge that today's Sacrao active members keep up the listening, keep up the learning, keep up the leading, keep up the lagniappe. And by the way, if you think that you might aspire to become Sacrao president someday, you may want to hang around the hot coffee urn every chance you get. Thank you very much. Every good wish.
I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so tired of on my own. Won't you?
I'm Albert Clary from Louisiana State University. I was Sacrao president in 1971 in Miami Beach. My first Sacrao meeting was in 1956. It was at Dallas, Texas, when John Hunter was president of Sacrao. John later became president of LSU, and I was his assistant at that time. In the earlier days, as I recall, Sacrao was a part of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. We met concurrently with them, and we were on their program. We did not even have our own program. And we'd have one speaker and a luncheon meeting, and that was about it. We then began to progress and to expand our program. And a great impetus to its expansion, I give credit to Calvin Cumbie. Calvin Cumbie was president of Sacrao 2 years before I was, and he was active in Acro, and he brought many great ideas to increase the professionalism in Sacrao, and a spurt of growth took place then. At the Miami meeting in 1971, he asked for developments. We had programs such as the following. We had one on athletic eligibility and the NCAA rule, 1.6 rule at the time. We had programs on living with the budget, commencement, what's new, what is happening to college traditions, and Southern colleges and minority groups. Of course, we had information exchanges, and we had opportunities to meet in small groups to discuss mutual problems. The meeting was in the Carillion Hotel on Miami Beach, and the price of the rooms were $14. Sacrao membership at that time was $5, and registration, I think, was $10. But during my years as president, I had the opportunity of writing the nomination for Calvin Cumbie to be president of Acro. And it was a great honor for me to do that. And of course, Calvin became one of the real leaders in Acro, as he had been in Sacrao. The next year, Robert Grogan was president, and unfortunately Bob became ill and was ill most all of his term. And Bert Ackerman was president-elect. So Bert, in effect, became president, and he presided at the New Orleans meeting. And then, of course, the next year he was president in his own right. So Bert Ackerman was from the University of Kentucky. He was Dean of Records and Admissions. And he's the only one that had 2 years as president of Sacrao. I'm pleased to see that Sacrao has continued to advance in its services to the states it represents and to the members of the association. I wish you well. I would love to be with you at the next annual meeting. I may and I may not, depends on circumstances. Thank you. It's a pleasure to present these few words about Sacrao years ago. Thank you.
Ohayou gozaimasu, ikaga desu ka? Those of you who were at the 30th annual Sacrao meeting in Lake Buena Vista, Florida in 1976 will remember that as presiding officer at the business meeting, I wore this kimono to commemorate the fact that I had just returned from a month in Japan where I was busy writing a pamphlet for the World Education Series. Since this was our first meeting in the Disney World area, we devoted one full afternoon of the meeting to free time for those people who wanted to go visit Disney World. Much of our discussion at this time was to continue the consolidation of the organization after our split from the Southern Association. This was probably the second full year of our split, and we felt like we were doing extremely well. Another of our projects or concerns was to discuss the admission of other states into Sacrao, namely Arkansas, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. As all of you know now, Arkansas and Oklahoma did come in, but West Virginia has stayed out.
Hello, I'm Columbus Posey, and I served as president of Sacrao in 1976 and 77. I guess our biggest single problem was probably financial. Nothing much has changed. Travel to all executive committee meetings was financed by the individual members of the executive committee with no support at all from the organization. I had been on the executive committee for 4 years, having served as treasurer for 3 years, and then, of course, a year as president-elect. Another really significant problem we had back then was an effort by ACRO to break up Sacrao. A lot of people don't know about this one. We had heard about this effort as a rumor, but it was several years later that this effort was confirmed to me by somebody who knew what was going on. The problem from ACRO's point of view, as I understand it at least, was that Sacrao, with the experience available from its double tier of associations, that is the state associations and the regional, was in a position to develop more good leaders than the other associations. Sacrao was, to use today's vernacular, overrepresented in ACRO's leadership. Needless to say, this effort did not amount to very much in terms of actual fruition. As a matter of fact, we expanded soon after that to include Arkansas and Oklahoma. Our meeting in 1977 was in Atlanta. And by the way, that's the only Atlanta meeting that we've had since Sacrao ceased to be an auxiliary association of SACs. And it seems to me we probably ought to think about going back to Atlanta soon. The meeting was held at the Century Plaza Hotel. The tradition of the Tuesday evening buffet had been begun by Gene Cropsey when we were went to Tampa in 1973. He hosted a wonderful before-dinner party on his campus in one of the old Flagler Hotel buildings. Not to be outdone, the next year when we went to Biloxi, Bill Fearling, the local arrangements chair at that meeting, had undoubtedly the greatest of all of these Sacrao events that I've ever attended, with due respect to everything that's gone on since then. It was at Mary Mahoney's, And the food, the fellowship, the entertainment, all of it was just spectacular. Conversely, the next year we were in Orlando. The hotel was not experienced in dealing with conferences, and to say, put it politely, the Tuesday evening affair was a disaster. They wound up by just bringing stacks of bologna, unopened loaves of breads, and jars of mayonnaise and mustard that hadn't even been opened out for us to make our own sandwiches or do whatever. I, of course, had the assignment to make sure that didn't happen in Atlanta, and that was part of much of the conversation with the people at the Century Plaza. As it wound up, we had a wonderful meeting, a great evening. We had 4 people there just shucking oysters, for example, and all the good food that one would want. We had a lady every evening playing guitar and singing for us in the attitude adjustment period after the last meeting of the afternoon. None of this, of course, could have happened without the extremely able support of the late Bert Carroll of Emory University and Claire Swan of the University of Georgia, who both of whom served as co-chairs of local arrangements that year. Back to the problems, and that's what they told me that we wanted to talk about, was problems that we had. Nobody said anything about putting accomplishments on this tape, so I'm going to talk about problems. But another real problem we had, and it again was associated with Sacrao, was the RAC. Now the RAC, acronym RAAC, for the, as I remember it, the Regional Associations Advisory Committee, had been formed with representatives from all of the regional associations in the nation to review and make recommendations to the Sacrao Executive Committee. Briefly, the Middle States people had developed a real clique sort of thing, and they kept their leadership closed to anybody else. There was no rotation, and finally the whole thing just collapsed. Back to the expenses that we talked about earlier, one of the things we did was expand the size of the executive committee so that we'd have a representative. I don't remember exactly if this was that year or one of the other years, but so we'd have on the executive committee a representative from each state. The idea was that that person, since we were all paying our own way to go to the meetings anyhow, that person could represent his or her state at their state association meetings, usually in the fall, but sometimes at other parts of the year, thereby reducing the travel budget for Sacrao very substantially. We kept the notion of having the enlarged executive committee, although since then we have not cut out the travel. We still have people visiting from state to state, and I guess that's a good thing. And although we have a membership on the executive committee equal to the number of states, we do have states that have 2 representatives now in modern terms, and I guess that's not an inappropriate movement for the group to go in. Things, though, just aren't like they used to be. For example, back then the nominating committee was always the 3 last presidents. It was, the feeling was they didn't have a bone to pick. They had done their thing and life was over for them. That's kind of the way I've been since my retirement. We did accomplish some things, although, as I said, my assignment was not to talk about accomplishments. We had, as I remember it, about 320 representatives at that particular meeting, and that was the largest we'd had to date. Of course, I think nearly everyone since then has been the largest to date, and I hope that trend continues for some time. I did leave out one little problem we had. I guess most of y'all remember our good friend Charlie Bay. Charlie was deeply concerned that the community college membership was not appropriately or adequately represented in the leadership of the group. And I remember when the meeting was over, he was adamant that he and I sit down and have a long talk, and we did on that last afternoon for about 2 hours in my suite, and Charlie really read me the riot act. I won't give Charlie credit for the change, but it was only a couple of years later that, or so, that Glenn Rose was named president, and he came from Broward Community College. So the community college people were very visibly represented soon after that. If I had any successes, and I'm not for sure that I did, but if I did when I was president, I can only attribute them to the great leadership of my predecessors, especially Al Clary and Bert Ackerman and Bob Kozer and Bobby Cochran, of course, and Mo Phelps. All of those were good people and brought unique attributes to our association that are still remembered to this very day. For example, the whole committee system and concept was really developed by Bert Ackerman after he had done something similar at Kentucky Sacrao. I'm supposed always to end with a quote, and so my quote for today, it seems most appropriate to me at least, if not to you, is to look to Mark Twain and remember what he said, that man is the only animal which blushes or needs to. Thank you very much.
Hello, Sacroans. Happy 50th anniversary. I'm Fabia Thomas. Several years ago, in fact, maybe several years ago, in 1977, at the Century Center Hotel in Atlanta, I was named President-elect of Sacrao. At the time, I was registrar and assistant to the chancellor at LSU in Shreveport, past president of the Louisiana Association, college registrars and admissions officers, and a member of several ACRO committees. My primary responsibility as president-elect was to work with the program committee to plan the program for the 1978 annual meeting. In 1978, at the annual meeting at the St. Anthony Hotel in San Antonio, I was elected president, the first woman in the history of Sacrao to be at the top post for the organization. What an honor and what an opportunity to work with some of the finest professionals in the college and university business. I have such fond memories, and I regret that time does not permit my naming names. During my tenure, we inaugurated the President's Luncheon at the annual meeting. This event provides a forum for past presidents to enjoy fellowship, to reminisce, and to discuss the future of Sacrao, excuse me. In 1979, at the Omni Hotel in Norfolk, I presided over the 32nd annual meeting of Sacrao, and then passed the gavel to Glenn Rose. I shall always have a vital interest in Sacrao and persons with whom I serve. I am deeply honored to have been granted honorary membership to Sacrao, an outstanding professional organization. If you will forgive a personal note, I would like to mention how grateful I am for the support that my husband, Wally Thomas, gave me during all of my Sacrao activities. There were times when I thought Wally Thomas was better known in Sacrao than was Fabian Thomas. For the Norfolk meeting, Wally wanted the Louisiana delegation to wear some special hats, but he didn't want to wag those hats all the way from Louisiana to Virginia. So he sweet-talked Marceline Staples into buying the hats for him in Virginia, in Norfolk. She did because Wally asked her to do it. And a few days following the meeting, she wrote a memo, a little note to me, and said, "Tell Wally if he ever needs any damn hats, I'm his contact." Marceline, Jim Valancourt, and a host of other very personable Virginians extended unforgettable hospitality. We worked hard and we played hard.
Jobs of the propulsion systems are finished. Until the next flight.
10 knots, 200 knots.
Hi, I'm Claire Swan from the University of Georgia. My Sacrao presidency was in 1981 and 82, and we met in Birmingham that February at a brand new hotel. So we were all about a new decade. But I need to go back before the decade started to when I was vice president of Sacrao, and Columbus Posey called me early in 1980 or maybe even late 1979 to say, as chairman of the nominating committee, Columbus began the conversation on the telephone with, "You don't want to be Sacrao president, do you?" And doing a quick flashback, I thought about the task force that had been my privilege to chair, the role and scope of the 1980s and the function for Sacrao. And we had done some really good examining of what we thought would be the problems of the next decade. And so I was excited about that and working with the executive committee that was coming along. The big challenges were affirmative action and the potential enrollment declines that we were all worrying about and hearing about. So two of our biggest challenges were acknowledging affirmative action, participation, and leadership of women and all minorities, and leadership in all areas of our educational lives. The enrollment problems we went to work on ahead of the game, I think, as an organization to avoid the doom and gloom that we heard was coming down the pike for our institutions. So I think Sacrao can be commended and is still being commended for doing such good jobs with the enrollment projects and problems. We had had our first female president of Sacrao just a couple of years back, and maybe Columbus was expecting me to say, "We just did that," but Sacrao colleagues would expect just the opposite of me. So we went to Birmingham in that new hotel and had a terrific experience that February in Birmingham.
Hi, I'm Jim Valancourt. I was president of Sacrao in 1983. At the time, I was Dean of Enrollment Services at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. Our annual meeting was held in 1983 at Fort Worth with Jack Thornton as the local arrangements chair. When I think about the issues that we dealt with in 1983, my memory isn't the best of memories, but I think we had essentially two things that we were dealing with. One had to do with the expansion of Sacrao to include Arkansas and eventually Oklahoma. We had the question not only of whether it was right for Sacrao to do that, but we also had to work through some things with the national organization because there were some indications that they were concerned about our expansion. We resolved those, and Arkansas came first and then Oklahoma. I believe Oklahoma came the year after I was president, but it was settled to everybody's satisfaction, and it's been a very productive situation for Acro and Sacrao since then. The other thing that we dealt with was site rotation. Prior to 1983, it's my recollection that there really was not a formalized plan to put the annual meeting in a different region of the state each year. And so that was done in 1983, and I know it's been changed since then and improved upon. But as I say, I think that was the first time that we did it in a deliberate way. Other than that, I can observe that it was a great year in the sense of working with so many dedicated professionals. In my work now with nonprofits in Nashville, Tennessee, I see that the dedication is the thing that makes a difference in how nonprofits work, and I can relate that back to my time in admissions and records and all of those who were very active in not only in Sacrao but in Acro and in their state associations were the dedicated professionals who made a difference in their institutions and to our professionals. So my hat is off to all of you, and I wish you and Sacrao well, those of you who are still in Sacrao. Those of you who are out, as I am, I look forward perhaps to seeing you in Louisville on the occasion of the 50th anniversary.
I am Margaret Ruthven Perry, Registrar at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was elected president of Sacrao in 1983, and an executive committee of 12 members joined me: Luther Gunter, Gene Saucier, Tom Stewart, Don Coleman, and Eddie Morris. Secretary was Kathy Plant, and treasurer was Leon Hess. Members at large were Carol Meadows, Mark Strickland, Liz Murray, and Fred Stewart. We had a formidable task due to the economy of the universities and especially travel budgets. Sacrao itself had a budget crunch. So we tried to address the problems in the following way: diversification in membership, communication, carrying the message to the states, setting up a method for dealing with the high-tech movement which was afoot in the United States. It was a breathtaking time. Sputnik had been launched, and the information age had arrived in the United States. The curtain on the 21st century had been raised. Coping was our problem. There were 5 threads running through the organization of Sacrao: diversification, management styles, boundaries, and information age, and taking the information to our group. In the several meetings which we held, we considered taking the expertise to the various state organizations, issuing a call for all members to join, for all institutions to send their members. This would enhance the diversification. Eddie Morris, a bright, energetic, and skillful diplomat, arranged this for us. Harriet Parker of Western Carolina published a resource index. Remember, internet is not yet available. We decided to cope with the management styles by holding a management workshop in Tennessee in June, and later in Tennessee we held the MODS workshop. That workshop was the management of data for students. We lowered the cost to $45 for registration, and 119 members came. That is a record, double the former enrollment. PCs were now available, so we could begin to touch the new age. We decided to increase the number of issues of the newsletter and to publish a journal. We had no funds to support the journal, no funds for new ideas of any sort. If you thought it up, you had to fund it. So I took the editorship of the journal and then spent a great deal of time finding sponsors. Ultimately, we succeeded. I shall be eternally grateful for those sponsors who supplied the cash we needed for publication. This is the 10th year for the publication of a journal, and I'm happy to say it is a handsome publication. Part of the articles in there deal with the growth of Sacrao. To encourage this new idea, I established a fund to to be awarded by the executive board of the editorial board, described as the best paper. At the end of the time of my funding, the Sacrao Executive Committee established the Margaret Ruth and Perry Distinguished Journalism Award. I was flattered and elated, but most of all, I was elated about the publication. It is still in good health. A second issue had to do with the boundaries and membership. The idea of adding additional states broke the organization into three opinion groups. Those who wanted to stay the same, those who wished to break it up, and those who wished to accept. After about a year of some serious conversation, Oklahoma joined Sacrao, and we remained as a single unit. The Sacrao Association was somewhat concerned about our idea of publishing a journal, which they felt might be in competition with college and university, which indeed it enhanced their own publication, and about the close-knit vote of the Southern Association. We delivered on the ballot and nominated the elections and chair of the Elections and Nominations Committee, which of course determines the selection of the actual president. With the skillful diplomacy and leadership of the Sacrao Executive Committee, those fears were put to rest. It is now some 10 years plus since that time, and I'm happy to say that Sacrao is in good hand. The boundaries have remained the same, diversification in membership has been attained, and we are with it in management style. I thank all of you for the support which you gave me at that time, and all the succeeding presidents. I have brought some old copies of a journal with me, and I would be glad if you would take a copy. I do not wish to ship them back home. Thank you again for support and for Sacrao.
Hi, I'm Luke Gunter. What a privilege it is to have been a part of Sacrao. Perception 85 was the theme of the 38th annual meeting held in Savannah, Georgia. Don Coleman was chair of the local arrangements committee. Don and his staff did a great job. There were many exciting topics presented at this meeting. Jim Green presented telephone registration. There was online transcripts, using PCs, word processors, using safety paper, databases. A major concern during the conference was the weather. A major winter storm hit the area. Getting home became a memorable experience for those who had to cross the Smoky Mountain. I missed the excitement of the challenge of being a registrar. Sacrao has always met the challenge with the spirit of sharing, with excitement, with energy, and always will be the best. I missed all of you. Best of luck, good health, and happiness to all. Have a fantastic meeting.
My name is Gene Socher. I was president of Sacrao in the mid-1980s. And I bring you greetings from the state capital in Jackson, Mississippi. A state with 18.5 million acres of forest, beautiful parks, low property tax, and no income tax on retirement incomes. Hattiesburg is the hub of South Mississippi. It is no more than a 2-hour drive to the Gulf Coast, Mobile, Jackson, Natchez, or New Orleans. This is an ideal place to retire, so y'all come. I retired from USM in 1993 as assistant to the Vice President of Business and Finance. And after winning a seat in the House of Representatives, I'm currently serving my second term. My best accomplishment as president of Sacrao was seeing that the Sacrao Journal, started by my predecessor, Margaret Perry, was continued. Today, Sacrao has a publication of which it can be proud. I wish you all well and hope you have a great meeting.
Hi, this is Tom Stewart. I was president of Sacrao in 1987 and 88. We had the meeting in Orlando. Joe Roof was pretty much in charge of weather, And I don't know if any of you remember the meeting in Orlando, but the weather was pretty bad. We're not letting Joe handle any more meetings, especially after the one he handled in Jacksonville a year ago. But he tells me from now on the weather's going to be great anytime we have a meeting in Florida. I was president after Ray Steins and before Mark Strickland. Back then I was, and still am today, the registrar of the Kendall campus of Miami-Dade Community College. One of the problems we had with Sacrao was Glenn Rose, a president before I was president, and Joe Roof afterwards have tied up the Florida representation on the executive committee for about 15 years. So now that the three of us are out of there, maybe somebody else will have a chance. The weather, as I said, in Orlando was unseasonably cold that February of 1988. One of our claims was that we had a very, very eventful business meeting. Ray Steins had started some long-range planning goals the year before, and I was trying to implement them. And one of the things at our business meeting was trying to decide who really is eligible for membership in the association. And that led to some very, very spirited discussions on the floor of the business meeting. Quite memorable for me, at least. The Orlando meeting was very much like a lot of other meetings. This was 9 years ago now. And Bob Morris, humor columnist for the Orlando Sentinel, was our speaker. But we had some of the topics which are still familiar today: legal issues, creating an online system, desktop publishing, measuring recruiting effectiveness, new NCAA rules, enrollment management, and of course we had a Sacrao town meeting. The town meeting wasn't as eventful as the business meeting, as it was supposed to sort of take the pressure off the business meeting, which didn't work out quite that way. So all in all, 1987-88 was a good year, and I enjoyed very much being president and appreciated the opportunity to serve Sacrao. Thank you.
Greetings to my fellow Sacrao colleagues. I'm Mark Strickland. I'm the Dean of Academic Services and University Registrar at the University of New Orleans. And it was my pleasure to be a member of the Sacrao Executive Committee from 1983 to 1990. I served as a member at large, Vice President for Records and Registration, President-elect, President, and of course, past President. I was President in 1988 through 89, and at that time our meeting was held at the Sheraton Kensington from February 11th through the 15th, 1989, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Leanne Brewer was the local arrangements chairman and did an outstanding job. It was our first visit to Oklahoma, and we had 500 members in attendance at the meeting. President-elect Michael Malone put on an excellent conference, many programs of interest, a lot dealing with enrollment management, which was just coming into the limelight at the turn of the decade of the 80s to the 90s, and a lot of emphasis on this. The meeting had several new things in that on Saturday we conducted a college fair in which about 25 universities participated. And this got us very good press in the Tulsa area and for about 100 miles around Tulsa, and afforded the opportunity to a lot of students in that area to visit with universities and colleges that they would not have had the chance to do so. Probably 300 or 400 students attended this college fair. One of the highlights, I think, of the meeting was the Oil Barons Ball, because it afforded us the opportunity, at least some of us on the executive committee, to dress in formal attire. And of course, being from New Orleans, anytime you can dress in formal attire and go to a ball, you seize that opportunity. So we were in our tails, and Joe Roof and Mike Malone, and it was quite a sight. But it was really a nice evening with a big dance band, and everyone had a great time. The major focus of my administration really was that not to reinvent the wheel, but really to continue adding enhancements to existing projects, procedures, and policies to ensure that the continuity and the well-being of the organization. Those people who had come before me, especially in the 80s, had done a very good job, the executive committees and the presidents, of placing Sacrao on really a very sound foundation. And what we did was simply to continue that work that they had done, and some of the areas that we tried to venture forward in. Of course, we renewed our support for the Sacrao Journal during the administration. It changed, the editorship of the journal changed. Margaret Perry, the founding editor, who had done such a remarkable job in starting the Sacrao Journal and worked so hard to get it going, stepped down, and Linda Finley from McNeese State University in Louisiana took over. And we made some decisions at that time to separate the business manager's position from the editorial board, and Jerry Montag took over this operation so that he could go out and raise advertising money that would help support the journal. And the executive committee voted to continue the journal for another 2 years and then to review it. And of course, in hindsight now, we look back, we see that the journal is well established, and that the efforts of people like Margaret Perry and Linda Finley and members of the journal board have allowed the journal to get to where it is today. One of my projects, and something that I've worked for many years and that we worked hard on during the year that I was president of Sacrao, was better communications, a better working relationship with the NCAA. Because in the 80s, the registrars and the admissions officers were basically being closed out from contact with the National Collegiate Athletic Association. And while many of us were responsible for the certification of athletes, we couldn't even make a phone call to the national office of the NCAA for clarification. And so we worked very hard during that year, and we tried, the executive committee granted me permission to work with the NCAA to establish a relationship between Sacrao and that agency. And in turn, we worked with Acro. And the result was that we decided that Sacrao would back off a little bit from our pressure, and Acro would work hard for us. And I think our efforts led to probably a little bit better communications. While we never really got the right to make these telephone calls and such, I think we established other inroads in which the communications then was much better. And this resulted in Sarah McNabb, who was at Indiana University and who was Acro's representative to the NCAA, attending our national meeting, our regional meeting, and spending some time with us, learning about our needs with the NCAA, and really going back to the NCAA and carrying our message to them. From that, as I said before, I think our relationship with the NCAA was much better. As with all presidents, I think one of the nicest things about being the president of Sacrao is the ability to travel and to meet with other state associations. I was very fortunate in that I got to attend the Carolina meeting, the Georgia meeting, and the Florida meeting. And I got to see really what I always knew, that the strength of Sacrao comes from the state associations and from their membership. And as you know, Sacrao is a regional made up of many states, and because our states are so strong, therefore Sacrao is very strong. And I was, you know, especially appreciative to the Florida group, because when I attended their meeting in St. Petersburg, they went out of their way to make sure that this New Orleanian felt at home, and they even staged a hurricane for me. And the last evening of the meeting, we were in the hotel, and we were the last people left on the island, and there were 85 and 90-mile-an-hour winds buffeting the hotel. But I felt right at home, and I'll always be appreciative to my Florida friends. It's really an honor to be able to serve an organization such as Sacrao. And I will always cherish the 7 years that I was able to be on the executive committee, the friendships I made, the travels that I got to make. It was rewarding to me both professionally, intellectually, and I always remember it. I encourage all of the people in Sacrao, all our members, especially those new members, to get involved with the organization and to seek an opportunity to serve the organization. I think you will find it most rewarding. I'm sorry that I can't be with you at this meeting, the 50th birthday of the organization, but I know that all my friends, my colleagues will carry on. You'll have a good time. You'll enjoy Louisville. I'm sure Ray Steins is going to put on one hell of a meeting. I hope the weather cooperates and that you have a great time. Enjoy.
I'm a fellow Sacroans, Mike Malone. I had the pleasure of being the president of Sacrao in the 1990 year. 1990, Sacrao was held in February in good old Charleston, South Carolina. But that particular meeting will best be remembered for what almost occurred and what almost didn't occur. The fact that it was almost canceled, yet through the great work of the local arrangements committee and the executive committee, it was a meeting that went on nevertheless. There was something written in the program bulletin that year that said, Hugo could not deter us. And so we had a meeting despite the fact that Charleston was practically wiped out in that great fall hurricane that they will remember as Hugo the Terrible. But I can't say enough about the work that entire summer and particularly fall by the local arrangements committee headed by Terry Davis, South Carolina, and of course Paul Anderson, who was president-elect of Berman. My only contribution was to make the decision that if we can pull this off, we're gonna do it. But I had full confidence that the LAC people could, and they did. And as they say, the rest is history. I'll always remember the standing ovation that was given to Mayor Riley when he stood before us and told stories about the aftermath of the hurricane. There was probably not a dry eye left in the auditorium that day, and the fact that Sacrao had the courage to go on with the first meeting after Hugo will probably stand in the minds of the city, at least the city council and the mayor, as some courage on our part. But then, of course, when we gave the $500 check to the Hugo Relief Fund, I think that probably indicated that we were very much acknowledging the good work of the Charleston area people in overcoming the disaster. There weren't that many issues that I can think of, but I do know one that I'm probably the most proud is that as an executive committee, I think we once and for all defined the nature of EEO and what role it needed to play in Sacrao. And as a matter of fact, I charged one of the members at large to Gil Moore to take on EEO as a project and make sure that we had several programs during the session, and he carried that off very well, and also developed an EEO committee that I thought was very representative of our membership. One issue that we did not clarify, that it took Paul Anderson's administration to clarify, and that was the seemingly the age-old quandary, Sacrao quandary, about what do we do about voting in representation on the executive committee by state. And I'm very pleased that I was a part of the reconciliation of that the next year, but there was nothing that we could do during my administration. So I guess in a nutshell, Sacrao 90 in Charleston will be best remembered for the meeting that was, despite the compelling reasons to cancel, and we didn't. And again, the rest is history there. But it also showed the Sacrao spirit, the can-do, we get the job done attitude, and I think we laid the groundwork for some future administrations to pick up on the development of issues of EEO, and also voting representation, and the organization of and structure of the executive committee.
I'm Paul Anderson, Associate Dean, University Registrar at Furman University in South Carolina, and it was my pleasure and honor to be on the Executive Committee of Sacrao for 5 years, in 88-89 meetings as Vice President for Records and Registration, 90, President-elect in Charleston, and in 91, President at Lexington, Splendor in the Bluegrass. This was an excellent meeting in many different areas. Culturally, the Lexington Symphony played, which was just an outstanding event. Academic program, the 61 sessions that we had and the 10 workshops were well done as usual. And at the business meeting, many changes were made by the membership for the betterment of Sacrao. The dues increase to $75 was passed unanimously and is still in effect. The executive committee was reorganized. The ballot and the way and number of people for the N&E committee was reorganized. EEO became a standing committee and also a program committee, and Moses was completely reorganized. All these initiatives are still in place for a better Sacrao. In 90, I have to say a few words about the Charleston meeting. It was held after Hugo, so many changes were needed. Again, it was an excellent program, and people will always remember the Low Country dinner, or the Beaufort stew, or the shrimp boil, as it is called. One further thing, I have to go back to 89 in Tulsa, when Dennis and I made fools of ourselves and we whistled. But before I give you that final whistle, I also have to go back to Charleston when the presents were given to Mike Malone, who was going out as president, when we played the Chariots of Fire, and Dennis came down in the running outfit that was given to Mike as the president.
At 8:34, that's a quick look at the news. Let's go back outside to Katie.
All right. Matt, thank you very much. Coming up next, we're going to hear about the weather from Al, and also we're going to do a little stripping with Bob Vila, stripping furniture. That's right after these messages.
Hi, I'm Carol Metters from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And yes, that was me on national TV with Katie Couric on the Today Show. Richard Yount made me include that because he seems to think that my Sacrao experiences prepared me for the national limelight. And oh yes, if you happen to watch a biography on A&E on Kathy Lee Gifford, well, I'm on that too. I went to New York City last September and I was on national TV, not once, but twice. I had the pleasure and privilege of serving Sacrao as president for the year 1991-92. The annual meeting for that year was in Birmingham, February the 9th through the 12th, 1992. Ironically, in the year 1988, I had put in a bid to have the conference in Birmingham, and I fully expected to become the local arrangements chair. But a few things happened along the way to change that, and I had the opportunity to preside as president in my hometown, the first and only time that I think that has ever happened. And because it was in my hometown, I was able to include my parents. They were able to come to the conference and meet my friends and colleagues. Jerry Smith of Jacksonville State University served as the local arrangements chair, and the program was coordinated by President-elect Dave Stones of the University of Texas at Austin. It was an outstanding program, and it was a pretty good thing that it was, because besides the program sessions, our conference attendees had calls from the shopping at the Galleria Mall. There were over 200 shops that they could go to that was located next to the Winfrey Hotel. And oh yes, we did not have a blizzard or ice storm or other significant weather problems. The Moses Conference during my presidency was held the previous July 14 through 17, 1991 in Atlanta, Georgia. The conference had taken a sabbatical the previous year so that we could review the role and scope of the conference. We wanted to revitalize it and provide the necessary organizational structure for it to continue to be a viable offering for the association. The program was excellent and introduced us to Windows applications and many other of the latest technologies. The local arrangements and program committees did an excellent job. They were headed by Bill Leslie, Annette Satterfield, and Joe McIver, all of Georgia Tech. Some of the noteworthy things that occurred during the year included the following. At the beginning of my term, the United States had been involved in the Desert Storm crisis in the Middle East. So some of our time was spent supporting students, faculty, and staff who were serving or whose families were serving in the military at that time. Fortunately, that crisis ended very quickly. For the year, we had 2,839 individual members from 619 colleges and universities. Sacrao won an ACRO award for the Best State Regional Professional Development Activity for the Moses Conference. Activities in the area of what was then called Equal Educational Opportunity, or EEO, continued to increase, and our database of information to identify members was completed. Many of our schools experienced disastrous budget cuts that resulted in numerous changes to our conference program. Dave Stones and his committee did an excellent job holding things together. In spite of all the budget and travel cuts, we had over 600 members attend the conference. Birmingham's central location permitted many members to carpool, and many even paid their own way, which I think supports the fact that the conference provides the kind of professional development that our members need to better perform their jobs. At the business meeting, we adopted several resolutions. One was approved to support the bid for the National ACRO meeting to be held in New Orleans in the year 2000. This time and location was not in line with the ACRO site rotation plan, but Sacrao's strength was evident, and the ACRO board approved it and cited our resolution as being significant. Another resolution approved by Sacrao requested that the NCAA permit each college or university certifying officer the opportunity to call the NCAA Legislative Services Office for interpretive questions. This resolution was then adopted by the ACRO board, which recognized Sacrao for its leadership in this area. Again, Sacrao spoke, and we were heard. We also adopted the model statement on what is an official transcript. This was designed to educate those receiving college transcripts, primarily employers, to help deal with the problem of academic fraud and the misrepresentation of credentials. We had previously approved an increase in the membership dues, and we were able to report an improvement in the budget. Financially, we had been doing well. However, profits from the annual meeting had been subsidizing the regular activities of the association. And because these profits were neither planned nor guaranteed, we wanted to be sure that the association remained on a good financial base for the future. Our treasurer at that time, Joe Ruth, did an outstanding job making all that work. We approved additional membership categories for educational agencies such as higher education governing boards, corporate members, and graduate students. We also arranged to have a regular article on legal issues as part of the Sacrao newsletter. I had the unique opportunity to serve on the executive committee in several different positions for 10 consecutive years, from 1983 to 1993. During that time, I saw many improvements to the organizational structure of the association and the resulting services and benefits provided to our members. I cherish the professional opportunities and personal relationships and friendships that resulted from my work during those years. Congratulations, Sacrao. Happy 50th, and thanks for the memories.
Hi, I'm Dave Stones. I'm at the University of Texas at Austin, and I was Sacrao president for the 1993 meeting, which was held at the Radisson Plaza Hotel in Fort Worth, Texas. We had some interesting issues, nothing really critical, I don't think, but we had some things we worked on during the time that I was president of Sacrao. The thing that pleased me the most probably was the movement to electronic media for communication among members of the executive committee and the program chairs in planning the meeting, and that we got universal access to BitNet internet during that time, and so we were able to communicate really well. We restructured the EEO committee into a professional access and equity committee, and with a lot of help from Bruce Cunningham and Hope Walton, we achieved some things there and kept that force actively moving forward. We also worked on the site rotation and tried to get away from the 4 regions to a 3-region rotation, which is in place now and which appears to be working a little bit better. The meeting itself, though, was in Fort Worth, and it was a real successful meeting. And you can't talk about that without talking about Jack Thornton, who is the LAC chair. And Jack is a real crusty individual, former Sacrao president, and he has his own way of doing things, but he's extremely reliable. And he had everybody else on the executive committee just on nails, thinking that he wasn't taking care of all the things, which some of us knew that he would get done. He insisted on an extremely low registration fee, despite all of the objections of the rest of the LAC. And then he proceeded to negotiate a real good deal with the hotel, and he ended up making a profit, which is the last thing they wanted to do. And so he disposed of that by providing champagne for the final breakfast, which was somewhat controversial, but he wanted to make sure that he didn't put anything back into the treasury. Another interesting thing, I thought, was the appointment of Gary Gibson of Vanderbilt to be chair of the Resolutions Committee. And I felt real proud about that, because I thought that Gary had a real good sense of humor. He turned that around on me when he brought Paul Welch out in his Ross Perot ears and his single straight line graph to show all the trends which had happened in Sacrao that year. And they did a pretty good job of making fun of the organization and of Richard Yount, who followed me as president, and also a little bit of me too, I suppose. So I felt real good about that appointment and about their presentation. I felt real good about the meeting too. It was a fun meeting, and we got lots of people involved who hadn't been before. It was a real honor for me to serve as president, and I got to meet a lot of really neat people that way. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Richard Yount. I was president of Sacrao from 1993 to 94. Your presidential year actually begins the year before, when you're responsible for the annual meeting program. I was responsible for the planning of the annual meeting program for the Fort Worth meeting, and among other things, that meeting broke all attendance records, and we had a very, very excellent program. We had the local arrangements was chaired by Jack Thornton, and we had a very fine meeting. We during the year that I was president, we met at Sacrao in Orlando, and we hosted a hospitality suite that evening, or hospitality evening, because there was nothing in the hotel going on, and Sacrao still receives bills from that activity. Moses was in Baton Rouge and had a wonderful meeting there, and our annual meeting was held in Norfolk Waterside Marriott. Bruce Cunningham was the local arrangements chair, and he arranged for us to go on the Spirit of Norfolk, which was a boat, and it took us out to the Naval Yard and around, and a wonderful meal and dancing. And Bruce had always wanted to have a sock hop of his own design, and so Bruce had as our special event a College Days sock hop where everyone came dressed in their respective institutions' garb, and we had a sock hop, and it was wonderful. We had wonderful, wonderful music. Carolyn Parham was president-elect, and she had planned the program around a whole new set of session openings, because we began on Sunday evening with our opening session. So on Monday morning we had some new blocks open up, and this was because we had such a wonderful facility. The Marriott was a brand new hotel. In fact, the contract for the Marriott was signed by Paul Anderson when he was president, and the institution, I mean the hotel hadn't even broken ground yet. He had some kind of a connection with the man who was doing the developing. And we were the first conference actually to book with that Marriott. We used that to our advantage throughout the meeting, and had some wonderful activities and meals and things that they really bent over backwards for us. And well, we all benefit from it. The executive committee always meets the Wednesday afternoon after the annual meeting. And the next morning, on Thursday, we left Norfolk in probably one of the worst ice storms that any of us have ever been in. It was all we could do to slip to the airport and get out of Dodge, so to speak. During my year as president, I took credit for a number of things that the executive committee put into action. We had gone into the year with a budget that expected to have to dip into reserves because we decided not to raise dues, as Sacrao is so good at doing. And because of the frugality and close management of our treasury, we did not have to do that dipping. We revised our budget and came in under budget. We completed implementation of the 3-region rotation plan for annual meetings. That before had been 4 regions, and it was hard for some because there were so few states in a region. So we combined some of those, and that's still the plan that's in effect today. We had audit committee the year before recommend that we receive regular external audits, and we decided that we would do that with the change of treasurers. So Sacrao, I believe, still continues with that with external audits every 2 years. COPA died during this year, and so we had to change our constitution to reflect that, because prior to the change, COPA, you had to be listed in COPA in order to be a member of Sacrao. It was the first year we had a vice president for states, regionals, and membership, and Linda Finley did the yeoman's task on that, and we had a very large jump in our membership because of the efforts of that vice presidency and Linda. We began discussion during the town meeting for a point system for the Distinguished Service Award, and that has since been codified. One of the wonderful things was we picked up on the Texas mentoring program that they had won an award from Sacrao for, and we put it into practice, and Linda Finley again was responsible for that, and Jane Perkins chaired that committee, and we had a lot of mentoring going on, wonderful activities for new members during that time. Probably the thing that I'd say that we sweat a lot of blood and tears over was what to do with the journal. The journal was running into hard times, so to speak, and we asked Ray Steins if he would take over the editorship, and he did. And I think the activities of the journal board, and especially Ray, since that time have merited us with, I believe this year, our 10th edition that celebrates our 50th year with the completion of the history of the Sacrao years. Thank you very much for staying with me. I've talked long as usual, and I hope that Sacrao has a great next 50th.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Parham, University Registrar for the University of South Alabama in Mobile, Alabama. And I had the honor of serving as Sacrao's president in 1995. Our annual meeting was in Jackson, Mississippi, and we had a record-breaking attendance of 670. Jane Perkins of Millsaps College was our marvelous LAC chair. The theme of our meeting was Mississippi at its best. Mississippi's best was exemplified to me when the Sacrao membership presented me with a lovely friendship quilt. 1995 was a very good year. Under the editorship of Ray Steins, the Sacrao Journal received the Sacrao Professional Development Activity Award. Sacrao recognized for the first time two regionals, Texas Sacrao and the Carolinas Sacrao, for their leadership in promoting multicultural activities and involvement in their states. In addition, 2 scholarships were established to be awarded to individuals from underrepresented populations to attend an annual meeting. Hope Walton, as Professional Access and Equity Committee Chair, was responsible for these initiatives. The Recognitions and Awards Committee, chaired by Rick Skill, developed criteria for Sacrao's Distinguished Service Award that was, after much deliberation, adopted by the association. I am delighted to be a part of the 50th anniversary celebration of Sacrao, and it is hard to believe that I have attended half of the annual meetings. I'm shooting for at least 25 more.
Hello, I'm Gerald Roof, and I'm Dean of Enrollment Management here at Seminole Community College. I was president of Sacrao in 1995-96, and I bring you greetings from sunny Florida. I've been asked to do this video history of Sacrao and talk to you a little bit about the time that I served as president of Sacrao. This is rather easy for me since I served just in the past year, the 1995-96. We held our annual meeting at Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, just outside Jacksonville. And I believe for those who attended the meeting, it'll be a meeting that will long be remembered as the meeting that took lots of people a long time to get there due to inclement weather. So if I had to list one outstanding memory I have of my year as president, it would have been the annual meeting and the changes and the flexibility we had to have to ensure that the meeting succeeded even though attendance was down and some of our presenters couldn't make it due to inclement weather. Some of the challenges that we faced during my year as president, I would summarize probably in 2 areas. One being the challenge that I gave to the membership to continue to be leaders on their campus. I believe that higher education today is going through a transformation as it has for many years, but today we're being challenged on many fronts. Fronts of access, student access to our institutions, financial aid issues concerning how will students be able to pay to go to college. And so I challenged the membership because we, in our offices of enrollment and admissions records, deal with these issues firsthand. We should be leaders on our campuses to make sure that our campus and our campus community understand the importance of the roles we have and the importance of getting our students into college. The other challenge we faced as an executive committee was the challenge of making sure that Sacrao was an organization that would allow access by the membership. And by this I mean we were working to ensure that everybody had an opportunity to participate in Sacrao. And I still believe that it is very important that all of you have the opportunity to participate in Sacrao. And we did this by trying to deal with issues involving the cost of participating in Sacrao, not only the cost of the meetings and the workshops, but the cost of being on committees and serving as committee chairs. Attempting to get Sacrao to cover more of its costs as an organization so that the institutions that we all come from will not have to absorb those costs. I know that this issue is still being addressed today. The current executive committee, of which I'm still a member, is dealing with this as we talk, as we prepare the budget for next year. I wish you the best, and I hope this is a very successful 50th anniversary. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Paul Taylor. I'm Dean of Student Affairs at Lexington Community College. And interestingly enough, I'm not quite sure why they've asked me to take part in this video since I have not yet been, nor maybe will I become the president of Sacrao. I currently, and this is 1996-97, am serving as the president-elect. Perhaps they feel that anybody that gets through that process of building the program and putting the program together for the following February will automatically or should automatically become president. So I thank them for the opportunity to be a part of this video. My year to be president will be the 1997-98 year, and we will meet in Corpus Christi, Texas, in February of 1998. This year I feel indeed fortunate to have been part of the 50th year anniversary meeting, which is taking place in Louisville, and certainly I've enjoyed the opportunity to work on that 50th anniversary meeting. I think if you look at major issues which have faced us over the last short time, and I think will continue to face us in the next 15 months, certainly one is the issue of technology. We have formed an ad hoc committee this year to advise the executive committee as to the direction that technology should take with the Sacrao organization. Right now everybody has a web page, whether it's a private individual or a public company or an institution, and we're looking for the best way to provide information to our membership from the standpoint of technology and using the web to help to deliver that information to our members. We want to link MOSIS, we want to link the Sacrao meetings, we want individuals to be able to get lots of information from our website, and we have a great committee put together to do that. Another issue which I think we'll be facing will be professional licensing. Sacrao has put together a task force, as many of you know, which is studying that issue, and I think that that is something certainly that we will work with and work toward perhaps over the next few years. Another major impact is going to be distance learning. With the Western Governors Conference and the Western University and the virtual universities in every state, and certainly many regions and governors and legislators becoming involved in the idea and concepts of delivering education to remote sites. I read an article just this week which indicated that where is your institution going to be? They asked this question, where will you be when Disney and Microsoft are delivering educational courses which traditionally have been provided by higher education? And I think we have to look at that and study that and become a part of that process. I think we have to look at the ability to be able to change. I think finally one of the things that we need to always consider is providing service to students. I think that it's our organization, Sacrao's, responsibility to assist our members and institutions in providing quality service to the constituents that we serve, and that's the students. And in times of budget cuts and in times of good times, we need to look at those students in ways that we can better deliver the product to provide a quality education for our constituents. Thank you.
I'm Linda Finley, the 1996-97 Sacrao president. My institution is McNeese State University in Lake Charles, Louisiana, where I am Associate Executive Director of University Services and Registrar. It is an honor and a privilege to be Sacrao president at any time, but it is very special to me to be president during the year of the 50th anniversary of Sacrao. Sacrao was born in December 1947 in Louisville, Kentucky, when it held its first meeting in conjunction with the annual meeting of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. It seemed only fitting that we should return to Louisville for the 50th annual meeting, February 8 through 12, 1997. Local Arrangements Chair Ray Steins, along with a group of capable professionals from Kentucky Sacrao, hosted a wonderful meeting. President-elect Paul Taylor, also of Kentucky, along with the program committee, planned an outstanding professional meeting covering a wide variety of topics. One thing different about this program is including a post-conference workshop on Wednesday afternoon on the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Technology is very important in our daily jobs and our daily lives. It is changing so rapidly that it is very difficult to keep abreast of those changes. We appointed a committee to advise the Executive Committee on technological issues and how those issues impact our membership. I'm sure that the recommendations of this committee will be important to the future of the association. For 49 years preceding my term, dedicated professionals have provided leadership for Sacrao, making it an outstanding professional association with national recognition. ACRO looks to Sacrao for much of its leadership. In 1996-97, ACRO President Kathy Plant, President-elect Fred Fresh, and President-elect nominee Paul Anderson are all active Sacrao members. The age of 50 is a time of self-examination. We look back to the past with nostalgia and forward to the future with hope. The Executive Committee decided that this is a good time to begin strategic planning for the future of this association. It is our hope that it will continue to be a guiding force in the lives of our membership, and that the first 50 years is only the beginning for the association.